You're already doing it right now in this moment, without trying, without technique, without any of the frameworks you may have been collecting or the practices you may have been circling. You are already creating the experience you are having, already selecting from an infinite array of branching possibilities the precise path you are walking. The question has never been whether you are creating your reality. The question is whether you know it, because the mechanism does not wait for your awareness. It doesn't require your permission or your understanding or your consent. It runs the same way whether you are conscious of it or not, the same way your heart beats, the same way your body regulates temperature, the same way the background processes of your biology continue without your attention. Reality is being generated continuously in every direction, and you are the instrument through which one specific version of it becomes your life. Bashar says this plainly in session after session across 41 years. You are already creating your reality, many times unconsciously, and with negative beliefs that don't serve you. He is not describing a spiritual possibility. He is describing a mechanism. The same mechanism used differently is what he calls the formula. And the formula is not a new way of doing something. It is a conscious version of something you are already doing all the time. This is where it shifts. This is where the conversation becomes different from every other conversation about manifestation, about mindset, about vibration and frequency, and attracting what you want. Because what Bashar is offering is not a technique layered on top of ordinary life. It is an instruction manual for a machine you are already operating, have always been operating, without the manual. Let's go into what it actually says. Everything begins with what he calls the state of being, not your actions, not your thoughts, not even your feelings exactly, but the underlying frequency from which thoughts, feelings, and actions all arise. The state of being is the vibrational signature you carry, and that signature is a filter. It determines with extraordinary precision which possibilities you can perceive. He makes this point with a directness that lands differently than most spiritual teaching because it is framed as physics, not as encouragement. You cannot perceive what you are not the frequency of. That is not a limitation the universe imposes on you. It is how reality works, the same way you cannot see ultraviolet light, not because it doesn't exist, not because you're being kept from it, but because your eyes are not built to register that frequency. When your state of being is predominantly low, when fear is the underlying current, when scarcity is the lens through which possibility is evaluated, you can only see the paths that are commensurate with that frequency. The opportunities that exist at higher frequencies are literally invisible, not metaphorically invisible, actually invisible. The branch of the timeline that would bring you what you want is there. It exists, and you simply cannot perceive it from where you're standing. When you shift the state of being upward, when you move into genuine alignment with what you actually are, more options become perceptible, not because the universe suddenly decides to offer them, because you have moved into the frequency range where they were always available. This is what he means by locking into your highest timeline, not choosing a better future from a menu. Becoming the frequency at which the version of your life you actually want becomes visible and navigable. And the 5 steps are the precise method for doing that. Step 1, act on your highest excitement to the best of your ability, with zero assumption about what the outcome should look like. This is the first step, and it is the one most likely to be misread, so stay with it carefully. Excitement is not enthusiasm as a mood. It is not a feeling you generate by thinking positively about something. It is a signal, a transmission. Your soul, and Bashar is precise about this. You are not a physical being that has a soul. You are a soul that is currently having a physical experience. Your soul communicates with the physical mind across a frequency gap. The soul operates at a vibration the physical mind cannot directly access, so it sends messages. And those messages, translated by the physical body, arrive as the sensation of genuine excitement, passion, creative aliveness. When something lights you up, not as performance, not as the thing you believe you're supposed to want, but genuinely in a way that your body registers before your mind has had time to evaluate it. That is your soul saying, this is the next step. This is your vibration. This is who you are. And the action of moving toward that thing, of saying yes to it and following it through, is the language through which the physical mind communicates back to the soul. The language of physical reality is not thought. It is not words or intentions or affirmations. It is actions. When you act on what genuinely excites you, the soul knows the signal was received, and it sends more. When you don't act on it, when you defer, when you file it away as impractical or ill-timed or too risky, the soul waits. It doesn't send more signals until the ones it has already sent have been acknowledged, not as punishment. As logic, sending more invitations to a person who has declined the current one would be pointless. There is a story Anka tells about a friend of his, a photographer. She had a dream of traveling the world, photographing sacred sites, pyramids, Stonehenge. Angkor Wat. She had no money. She understood Bashar's principles, so she didn't close that dream down with the belief that it was impossible. She stayed in the state where something might be possible, and her inspiration, the one that her ordinary mind immediately labeled as crazy, was to go to an airline and propose a trade. Fly her to these places, and she would provide photographs they could use to attract tourists. Not only did they agree, they paid her, put her in the best hotels, fed her, in her words, like a queen. She lived the dream in a form her logical mind could never have designed, because she was willing to stay open to a form she hadn't imagined. The path exists. For every genuine desire, for every authentic passion, there is a path. It may not look like the path your mind would design. It may not arrive through the door you are watching. But creation, Bashar says, does not make mistakes. If it weren't possible for you to live what you genuinely are, you would not be here. Your presence is proof of the possibility. Step 2. Stay in it as long as the excitement holds naturally, and then follow the next thing that carries the signal. The excitement of any given opportunity will naturally reach its endpoint. When it does, not when fear steps in and prematurely closes it, but when it genuinely completes, you stop. And you look for what now carries the signal, what now feels more alive than anything else available to you. This can be large things, it can be small things. A conversation, a walk, a book you feel pulled toward without knowing why. You follow the frequency wherever it leads without requiring it to look significant from the outside. And you stay in the unfolding without insisting it move at your pace or arrive in your preferred form. Step 3. No assumptions about the outcome. This is the step that undoes people, not because they can't do it in principle, but because the mind is constitutionally opposed to it. The mind wants to know where this is going before it commits. It wants the outcome specified, confirmed, pre-approved. It wants to imagine the ideal scenario and then insist, quietly or loudly, that reality deliver exactly that. And Bashar says this is not a limitation of strategy. It is a limitation of the instrument itself. The physical mind is genuinely limited. What your physical mind considers the highest possible outcome for a given desire is, from the soul's perspective, just the beginning. The soul can see arrangements, combinations, paths of arrival that are not visible from inside the physical mind's frame. If the physical mind insists on its version, it may block something better from reaching it. The visualization has a purpose. It is not useless. The purpose is to get you into the energetic state of excitement about the possibility, not to place an order that reality must fill exactly. The image is a symbol, an energetic symbol designed to put you in frequency. Once you are in frequency, release the form. Let the soul deliver what is actually equivalent to that energy. It will not be less than what you imagined, but it may arrive in a package the mind would not have chosen. Step 4. Examine and release the beliefs that create resistance. This is the deepest and most ongoing part of the practice. Not a single event of clearing your beliefs, but a continuous process of self-investigation, tracing the feelings and behaviors and thoughts that don't serve you back to their root. finding the belief, and asking the question that Bashar says is the single most important question anyone can ask themselves. Why? Why do I believe this? Why do I believe that if I do this, something bad will happen? Why do I believe I don't deserve the thing I want? Why do I believe the path is closed? Not the philosophical why. The personal, specific, traceable why. Where did this belief come from? What is it protecting me from? Does it actually serve me? Would I choose this belief if I saw it clearly and chose freely? He makes a distinction that reorganizes the entire landscape of self-improvement. There is no such thing as a lack of confidence. There is no such thing as a lack of trust. Someone who says they lack confidence is at that moment completely confident. Confident that they will fail. Confident that they are not enough. Confident that the worst will happen. The confidence is fully operational. The trust is fully operational. The question is not how to generate those things. The question is, what are you trusting? What are you confident about? Because whatever it is, that is what you will experience. No one is broken. No one is missing a capacity. The capacity is running perfectly. It is simply oriented toward what was installed early, before you could evaluate it, before you understood you could refuse it. Belief is the blueprint. What you believe is what you experience. Beliefs use feelings, thoughts, and behaviors to reinforce themselves, to create physical experiences that seem to prove them true, which creates the feeling that they must be true, which deepens the belief. The loop runs without your awareness until you trace it, but the moment you can see the loop, the moment you can ask clearly, what must I believe to be true about myself in order to feel this way? The loop is already loosening, not because you have replaced the belief with a better one, but because you have seen it, and what you can see, you can choose. Step 5. Do all of this with zero attachment to the outcome and act. The synthesis of the previous 4 steps is a state, not a practice you are doing, but a way of being you are inhabiting. You follow the excitement. You take it as far as it naturally goes. You release your insistence on the form. You examine and drop the beliefs that block the flow. And you stay in that state regardless of what appears in your external reality, regardless of what manifests next. Because here is what doesn't make sense until you've been inside it. Even what manifests in a form you don't prefer is information. It is feedback. It tells you with precision what belief was operating beneath your. It gives you the contrast, the exact definition of what you don't want, which is the most direct path to clarity about what you do. And when you use it that way, when you stay curious rather than crushed, when you look for what it's showing you rather than treating it as proof that the whole thing doesn't work, it moves through your experience and releases. Lessons received, it has no reason to stay. Bashar says, it doesn't matter what happens. It only matters what you do with what happens. That is not a platitude. It is a description of the mechanism. Your response to what appears in your reality is itself a transmission. Your state of being in the face of difficulty is itself the signal, and the signal determines what comes next. These 5 steps are the instruction manual, not for attracting a specific thing, for navigating reality the way it actually works, for becoming conscious of a process you have always been inside of, and from that consciousness, moving through it with precision, instead of being moved by it without understanding. Now let's go into what this actually looks like in the body, in the lived experience, because the steps on paper are one thing, and the sensation of genuinely applying them is another. The moment you begin to actually follow genuine excitement, not what you think you should be excited about, not what the spiritual community says you should be doing, but the actual signal in your body, the thing that makes time disappear, that puts you in what athletes call the zone, and what brain science measures as gamma waves. Between 40 and 100 cycles per second, that moment has a specific quality. It feels like permission you didn't know you were waiting for, like something relaxing that has been braced for a long time, because the truth Bashar articulates, and that every nervous system already knows, is this Being who you are is the easiest thing possible. Being something you are not is the most difficult thing you can attempt. We have simply arranged our lives, our self-concepts, our entire relationship to effort and ambition around the inverted version of that truth. We treat authenticity as the dangerous choice and performance as the safe one. We treat the thing that genuinely excites us as the impractical dream, and the thing that doesn't as the responsible path. And we exhaust ourselves, not because life is hard, because we're running someone else's race in someone else's shoes toward a finish line we never actually chose. This is what the first step cracks open. Not a technique, a reorientation, a return to the signal that was always there, underneath the noise of what you were told you were supposed to want. And the signal is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with certainty or clarity about where it's going. It just moves in one direction more than another, like water finding the lowest path, like the compass needle that doesn't know where north leads, only which way it points. You follow the pointing. There is a version of trust involved here that is different from the trust most people try to generate, the effortful, white-knuckled kind that is really a form of control in disguise. This is the trust that comes from understanding how the mechanism actually works. The photographer didn't trust blindly. She trusted because she understood that if you stay in the state where something might be possible, if you refuse to close the door before the path has had a chance to appear, the path has room to form. That is not faith as a feeling. That is alignment as a physics. There's also something here about what synchronicity actually is. Because once you begin moving through reality this way, following the signal, staying open to form, not insisting that the path look a certain way, you begin to encounter a quality of orchestration and ordinary events that you had not previously noticed. Or rather, you begin to notice what was always happening. Nothing happens by accident. Synchronicity is not the universe occasionally winking at you. It is the way everything works all the time. It just becomes visible when you are paying attention with your full frequency rather than the narrow band of linear planning. The traffic jam you're sitting in was not a mistake. The conversation that happened to occur at the moment you needed, it was not a coincidence. The book that appeared on the shelf at the right time was not random. Reality is an orchestration. And when you are in alignment with your genuine frequency, when you are inside the formula, you begin to perceive the orchestration rather than moving through it opaquely. Some of it will be immediately relevant to you. Some of it is for someone else, and you are simply a willing participant in arrangement that serves their learning. You don't always need to know which. You don't need to decode every synchronicity. Sometimes the lesson is simply to see that there is one, to acknowledge the intelligence of the arrangement, to stop treating the events of your life as things that happen to you and start recognizing them as things happening through you, alongside you, in collaboration with a pattern larger than what the physical mind alone construct. This is what becoming lucid in the physical dream looks like. Not departing from physical reality, staying more fully inside it than ever, but from a position of awareness rather than sleepwalking. The rules of the game are still the rules of the game. You still play chess with chess rules, but you get to choose what pieces you play with, what strategy you use, how fully you bring yourself to the board. The rules didn't change. Your relationship to them did. And there's something in this about darkness that the spiritual path often gets wrong. The higher your consciousness goes, Bashar says, the more aware of the negative you become, not less. The enlightened state is not the state where you can no longer perceive darkness. It is the state where you perceive it fully and choose not to engage it, not because you judge it as wrong, but because you genuinely prefer the light. You don't have to invalidate what you don't prefer. You simply don't choose it. You can acknowledge that the negative experience was part of your path, that it brought you to the clarity you now have, that without the contrast, you would not understand the positive with the precision you do. You validate it for what it offered, and you choose to move forward. You do not judge darkness to have more light. The darkness is still there, as a choice, always available. but you see it clearly for what it is, and you see clearly what you prefer, and the choosing becomes simple. This is not spiritual bypassing. Bypassing would be pretending the darkness isn't real, papering over the genuine experience with performed positivity. This is the opposite. This is looking at the darkness directly, fully, without flinching, and from that full seeing, choosing something different. Not because the darkness is invalid, because you actually prefer the light, because you have experienced enough of both to know which one is yours. The question Anka says Bashar leaves with every audience, the one he would most like people to carry with them into the next hours of their life, is not about beliefs or timelines or cosmic events or extraterrestrial contact. It is this: what stands in the way of being who you actually are, not what stands in the way of success or happiness or abundance. What stands in the way of being the specific, unrepeatable version of consciousness that arrived in this body, in this moment, in this life? What belief? What fear? What old story given to you before you had the capacity to refuse it? Because everything else, the formula, the timeline navigation, the synchronicity, the path finding its way through to what you genuinely want, all of it depends on this. On becoming as precisely and as honestly as possible who you already are, not who you have been performing, not who you were told you needed to be acceptable, lovable, safe, who you are. The easiest thing in the universe, the thing we have made into the most terrifying choice available to us. The shift is not a future event. It is not something that requires time or preparation or the right conditions or the right amount of inner work completed first. The shift is available in the next moment in which you move toward what genuinely lights you up, without apology, without guarantee, without knowing where it leads. The signal is already transmitting. It has always been transmitting. The question has never been whether the signal exists. The question is whether you are finally willing to trust it enough to move.